beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. This is the first part of a two-part series. The next part will be available 1 week after this one. Within these guides I will be showing you step by step how to set up a kegerator. As per usual, I will include lots of hints and tips. These guides should prove very useful for any kegerator setup, be it custom bought or self-built using a regular fridge. My aim with the guides is to keep them as short as possible in time, but rich in information for each part of the setup so that you can set things up a stage at a time by playing and pausing the videos as needed. I would suggest that you watch the entire guide once before actually using it alongside your own setup. I will be demonstrating all of this using the Kegerator Series X, which is a 4-tap model, but many of the techniques and methods used here are universal. During these guides I will also be looking at various component choices that make up a kegerator and giving key information. This guide starts with an empty and unplugged from power kegerator or fridge that has the necessary hole in the top drilled already. The very first step with purpose-built kegerators is to turn the unit on its side and attach the caster wheels to the bottom of the unit. Even though these are screws, it is often easier to use a socket wrench, at least until the screw is loose, as quite often these are bolted on very tightly. Once you have removed all of these screws, you can then use them to actually attach your wheels. The lock and caster wheel should be added to the front of your kegerator, and the regular type is used at the back. Having a kegerator on wheels offers a good level of convenience. Next we just add the railguard, which just slots in place. Having a railguard is a great finishing touch for a kegerator. These are very much standard on purpose-built kegerators and are highly recommended as an add-on for custom builds. Let's now look at beer line tubing. I am using the EVA barrier type here, which is very hard wearing, antibacterial and also very protective if your beer against oxidation. Hence why I guess it has barrier in the title. This EVA barrier can also be used for CO2 and is compatible with Duo-Tight and John Guest fittings. These make everything nice and tight and also very fast and easy to assemble. As you have probably already noticed, this is the 4mm type, and I will be cutting the beer line into 3m lengths to start with, using this handy tool that is part of the Series X package. This is a new setup seeing as it has 4 taps, so it is good to keep options easy and open to start with for testing. One very important step now is to look at the ends of your lines. Here you can see that the line on the left is cut off at a diagonal, whereas the line on the right is nice and flat, just the way we need it to be. If you have any lines that have ends like this, then be sure to give them a quick trim before using them. Next we have a couple of steps in regards to preparing the tap tower. For me, this starts with giving it a good clean and polish. You will not have as many easy options once it's mounted, so it's great to do this beforehand. Sometimes you might find some tough to remove marks or stains, and I would recommend that you use Barkeeper's Friend to remove these. This is super great stuff for anything stainless steel in fact. Otherwise a lemon based cleaner works just nicely for this job. Following this, experience has taught me to screw into each of the tap tower mounting screw points to ensure that they are clear of obstruction. This applies to self-builds as well as purpose-built kegerators as a precaution. This is because sometimes you can have plastic parts that need breaking in and other types of obstruction that are much easier to get around before you add the actual tap tower. This doesn't take long to do at all, especially if you use a drill, and you can potentially save yourself pain and time. Next, you can add the screws to each of the bottom holes of the tower and carefully position it to the hole on the top of your kegerator. You might find that some of these screws do not stay in position, but it is always a good head start for screwing these in, which you will do as shown, screwdriver in hand. Some towers have the screw holes on the outside perimeter, but the 4-tap tower is much larger, so they are on the inside. You are effectively screwing this in based on feel rather than sight, but this part should not take longer than a few minutes. One nice thing is that unlike the smaller tap towers, you have plenty of space to maneuver around in, even if you have large forearms. I would also suggest that you do not tighten these screws fully before you make sure that the tap tower's orientation is centered. Let's now add the beer line and shanks to this tower. For this step you start with your shank as shown. This is the part that connects your beer line to your beer tap. In the past we have added the beer line directly to the end of the shank, which involves heating up the line in very hot water and man-muscling it in place. A far easier method is available now where we can simply use a Duo-Tight fitting, which securely connects the line to the shank. This is very easily applied as shown now. Your beer line is then inserted by pushing in as far as it will go. After this, pull the other way to ensure that the beer line and the shank are both very well connected to the duo-type fitting. Then you can undo the bolt on the top of the shank and feed it and the plastic piece next to it down your line and remove them both from the line. Then take the opposite end of the line that you just added the shank to and feed it into one of the lower holes in your tap tower. It is important that it's one of the lower ones, as this will make life a lot easier. Then inspect the plastic part that you just removed from the shank. It is vital that the curvy wavy edge is added facing towards the back of the tap tower. This is added to the line end as shown with the nut following it. Once these are both on the line, pull the line to draw the shank end into the tap tower. Once you have done this all the way through, it should look something like this on the outside. Whereas the duo-type fitting should be within the tap tower with the hosing coming out of it. Your task now is to feed the other end of the line into the tap tower and through the hole into the fridge section of your kegerator. Do be careful while you feed your line, as you do not wish to lose the plastic piece and nut down the line. I tend to wedge them as shown here to stop them falling, but this is something to be careful of, as if they actually do fall down the line you might find it a challenge to retrieve them. It can certainly be smart to connect and tighten this quickly after the line is sent down. To connect this side and the outer side, you will need to match the plastic parts to the curve of the tower both on the inside and also the outside. This is the line on the far left side looking in. Do note that I have set it on a slight angle. This makes attaching the next lines easier. Follow the same process for all lower lines in your tap tower first, and then tighten the shank bolts inside securely. For a 3 tap tower this could just be 1, though they do vary on how they are arranged. The inside of my fridge section now looks like this with 2 lines. This is a great time to start labelling your lines, as they will soon get easily mixed up and harder to verify easily. There are various ways to do this, just make sure that whatever you use is going to be resistant to cold and moisture. I've used electrical tape an awful lot in the past, but this time I'm going to use water resistant labels which I'm adding on both sides of the line. When it comes to placement, I like to add them just above the area where the ball lock fitting will be for easy spotting. Having labelling for the lines is very handy, and I would just not want a kegerator without it. Getting back to our tap tower, this is how things will look once you have 2 beer lines in place. I would suggest utilising the space as best you can so that you can allow for these next 2 beer lines with enough easy space so that they can be placed through the bottom hole as easily as possible. The procedure for these next 2 beer lines is very similar to before, but I do have some additional recommendations. Firstly, I tighten up the nut on the shank loosely to avoid the nut and plastic piece from dropping. At this stage, if they drop, then it can get pretty crazy. I then start pushing the beer line into the tower and through the hole. Once I am through the hole from the top, I then open the kegerator door and locate the 3rd line's short length and draw it through from below. Be careful when you do this, a gentle smooth action is better than a Rambo grunt grab in case you create damage. When you feel resistance, then it is time to look up top again. You will now need to undo the shank nut and then readjust the shank before retightening the shank nut. This is how things will look after doing this. So now we just have 1 line left, and once again it is important to clear the way for the line as much as you can. I suggest using the same method for the 4th line as you did for the 3rd. Like most things, it will be as easy as the preparation that you give to it before you start the task. I will also point out that you can do all of this without the tap tower attached. Naturally, this method also has its challenges though, especially with a 4 tap tower and its internal screw fittings. Once you have all 4 lines and shanks in, you should now tighten the bolts fully on the top 2 shanks. Do not add the tap tower lid yet though, as there is one more step to come before you need to do this. This is the end of part 1. Please now move on to part 2 video for the rest of the directions. If you are watching this soon after release, then part 2 is coming out on Sunday. If you would like to discuss this or anything else beer related, then why not head to this YouTube channel's Facebook group. Details are shown on screen if you have not joined yet. This now brings this video to a close. If you have any questions, then please let me know via YouTube or Facebook. I do hope that you found this video to be useful, interesting and enjoyable. If appropriate, then please like this video on YouTube, and if you've not done so already, then please subscribe. I regularly post new content. Happy brewing!